So kind of back to the story. I was just going to say that, mental illness, I think I think it's the worst illness that there is because, if you had a broken leg, your mind would say, oh my gosh, my leg you know, is killing me. I've got to get to a doctor. I've got to get a cast. I've got to go to the hospital. And then you get a cast on your leg and people are like, oh my gosh, I can see that you can't, do what you normally would. Let me help you. Let me bring you dinner. Let me, get you some help. But when it's your brain, you can't put a cast on it. And when people find out that it's a mental illness, there's so much stigma around that. People don't know how to treat you. They don't know, there's a lot of mystery or and so much stigma. Think about all, every time people say, oh, someone's crazy and they're insane. I mean, all those words are just terrible words to use because you never know who might be suffering from something. And people throw them around all the time, and it's really devastating. So without, your mind being able to tell you need medication, you need rest, you need help, a person can't do that on their own, and the mind becomes like a steel trap. You can't really tell them anything. You can't make them do anything. It's just, it's so difficult, such a difficult illness. And I think it is, honestly, I think it's the worst illness anyone could have because it's just not easy. The medications are hard. They have so many side effects, on and on. But needless to say, Carl was pretty much in the depths of all that, trying to deal with that. But he was able to get a new job, or he was hired for a really good position. The company was based in California, and he was so excited. However, they wanted him to move to Minneapolis for a year of training or to work with a sales rep there. And so he had to leave California. It was in the dead of winter. He moved up there in November. It was right after daylight savings, so it was dark, it was cold, he knew no one. And he came home for Christmas in December, and I just knew it was not in a good place, and he wasn't doing well. And he wasn't. He was, I don't know, he made a couple of literally cross-country road trips from Kansas to Colorado to California and back, almost 3 times, I think. 2.5 times, I guess. The third time was when we were trying to get him help, and it was horrible because we finally called the police to try to help us get him to a hospital because we knew he needed help, and we knew he was a flight risk and he was going to leave because he wanted to drive back to California. And the police took him to the hospital, and within 2 hours they released him because they said, he was fine. They wouldn't listen, let us as a family, because of privacy, we weren't able to talk to anyone. And at that point, we had to just open our hands and give him his keys and let him go and just leave it in God's hands. And it was the second worst feeling ever, because we had to just let him go, knowing he was going to drive across the country and he was not in a good mental state. But we couldn't make him stay at that point. He was so furious at us for trying to get him help. And so he drove across the country, and it was all, a lot of it was recorded on social media, on his Instagram, and, we were able to track where he was every day, but it was terrifying. and he went to California, and then a friend reached out who lived in Phoenix, so he drove to Phoenix. By then he was really not doing well, and she and her boyfriend, actually at the time, they were able to get Carl admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Thank God the laws in Phoenix are different than they are in Kansas, and so because two people were able to witness and see the behaviors, they were able to admit him, and he was in a hospital for 19 days out there. So, I mean, just to tell you how bad off he was, how much he needed help. So after the hospital stay, they had a step-down program out there in Arizona, and we talked to Carl on the phone, and we talked to the specialists and everything, and we said, why don't you just stay out there for a while? It's sunny, it's warm, you can get the help you need, and then, kind of wait and see what you want to do, and don't just rush back here, because at that point he'd lost his in the new job that he'd gotten. So Bob and I waited about a week and a half, and then went out to Arizona, and by the time we got there, the car he had driven across the country in was a rental car from the company he was supposed to work for, so we got that car turned in. So he didn't have a car, but by the time we got there, he had bought a car. So he was, unemployed, and, I don't know, somehow he managed, though, to buy a car, and was getting ready to take off again, and he was going to go to Oregon or somewhere. So we were able to at least sit down and have lunch with him and talk to him and say, Carl, stay, just know that you can always come home, know that we're here, we love you. And then again, we had to open our hands again, just give him back to God and say, please, please take care of him. And that was like on a Thursday, and our flight wasn't home to get back to Kansas City until Sunday. So Bob and I went ahead and we drove to Sedona, and we just kind of took a couple days and just sort of tried to, sort it all out. And at that point, he was texting us a little bit, though, so we were in communication with him, and it was better, and we felt good about it. And by the time we arrived home on Sunday, Carl's car was in our driveway. So he had driven from Phoenix. He did go back to California, but I think just maybe ran on the beach and then turned around and drove back to Kansas. So he ended up making like 3 cross-country trips during a short amount of time. So I guess that was February of 2017, and he, after that, he started to kind of come down from the mania and realizing, what all had happened and what he had done. And again, he was so embarrassed and just devastated by probably what he had posted on social media. Everybody knew, what had happened. But we just, of course, embraced him with open arms, and brought him home and got him back here. And he wanted to, after a few weeks, though, he talked to our daughter and her husband, who they were all, K-State together and all good friends, and so he said, I'm in my 20s, Mom. I haven't lived at home for all these years, and they had a great guest room set up in their lower level with the bath and everything. So he moved in with them, and things were going good. He would go and play golf from time to time with Bob or our son-in-law, or try to do things together as a family. Had some good family meals, and but he was so then the depression, I knew he was depressed, and the mind, when your mind fires so hard and long like that, and then it's done, it leaves you very depleted. And so, he slept a lot. He needed to sleep. And then at times he couldn't sleep. And so, trying to remember if he got to a doctor, though. I think we were getting him, we did. We were able to get him back with his doctor that he saw in college. And he was trying medication. He was trying several different kinds, but they were switching it up a lot. And, there were side effects and different things, but he was trying to figure out, what would work. But that spring, we, celebrated my birthday at the end of April. We had Mother's Day. We had Father's Day. We had a big family wedding with all the cousins and everybody in town. But on June 23rd, 2017, Carl took his life. And it was, that was the worst. It is the worst. It's the worst nightmare that, any parent could ever imagine. A mother to lose a child like that. And the thing that was so sad, it was like sand kind of going through your hands. You're trying to grasp it because you're like, Carl, it's not that bad. Like, nothing is that bad. Nothing that happened, he thought he was in financial trouble. He wasn't in financial trouble. He even had money due back from tax returns that he just never took time to file, and he had savings. He didn't need money. I mean, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. But in his mind, he thought that he was a burden to all of us. Our daughter and her husband had just found out they were expecting their first baby, and they had told Carl, and I don't know if he felt like he shouldn't be there. I don't know. There's no way to know. But one of our priest friends, the one thing he said to me that really helped, he just said, we won't know in this lifetime. We won't know in this lifetime, and so there's no point in trying to figure it out and try to say, the whys. Why did this happen? Why did he do this? Because I know he would never hurt us like this, because, he loved us, and he knew he was so loved. So